Hello and welcome to the Blood Red podcast. I'm joined by Ian Doyle and Paul Gorst to unpick the lay of the land, how Liverpool got on in their 2-2 draw against Newcastle, which was salvaged at the death by a 99th minute unstoppable penalty from Dominik Szoboszlai. But before we get into it, we're going to thank one of our two show sponsors today, which is NordVPN and their app, which can help you with things like protection for your private data, like bank details, passwords, and online identity. It can also switch your virtual location, which allows you to save money by purchasing flights, hotels, and subscriptions from other countries at a cheaper price. So for more benefits and more information on that, just download the NordVPN app to your device and click the link in the podcast episode description below. And you will get a discount off your NordVPN plan if you do that. So you'll actually get an extra 4 months on the 2-year plan, and there's absolutely no risk because you've got a 30-day money-back guarantee from NordVPN. So once again, click the link in the podcast episode description box if you want to get a bit of that. And thank you to our first chatter in the live chat today, South Asian Scouser, saying big up to you as well, my mate. We've got plenty to talk about from that. How are you feeling, guys, about that match, that result? You know, I'm assuming the mood is a little bit better given the way it ended.
Yeah, I mean it's a decent result, but you can have your opinions about the performance. It just comes back to me to this issue that Liverpool don't have a sort of the defence first midfielder in the ranks. You know, they've got obviously Wataru Endo, but he hasn't played since February. He's 33 years of age. Has he ever really proven that he's good enough to be a regular starter in his 3 years at Liverpool? I'm not sure. He's obviously a cult hero, but I don't really think he'd be the solution to this. But clearly there's still a lot of kinks to iron out in this Iraola system. You know, it's the 4-2-3-1, and we know he's planning to use Florian Wirtz as the number 10. So that means that the two behind him, Ryan Gravenberch and Dominik Szoboszlai, have got to sort of work together. And the worrying thing for me is, okay, it's only early days in the Iraola system, but this is their 4th season together now as Liverpool players, so it's not like the strangers to each other and don't know how the other one likes to operate. And you look at both goals that Liverpool conceded. You know, I watched it back this morning on Match of the Day, and you know, the first one, it's just terrible. Like, Gravenberch goes forward, probably should shoot. Okay, they lose it, but Szoboszlai's further up with him, and then the second one is even worse, actually, because I think one of them, Szoboszlai or Wirtz, should just drag him back and just take a yellow. Yeah. Free kick in Newcastle's half, no danger at all, but they haven't done that either time. They've been punished, you know, with Newcastle making the most, really, of its 2 against 4, and they've still managed to put the ball in the back of the net on both occasions. So, you know, had Liverpool have ironed out that issue a bit better during pre-season, they might have come away with something more than a point. But when you score a penalty in the 99th minute to come away with a draw, I suppose you'd have to say that it is a decent draw. And it's a new look Liverpool. Obviously, it's a new era at Newcastle. They were massively sort of buoyed by the Matthias Jassel era, is it? And yeah, I mean, it's always a tough place to go, isn't it, Newcastle? So you'd probably say it's a decent point, but the performance you can analyse in a lot more detail, and I think there's still a whole lot to work on for Iraola and the rest of the players.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of opened up a whole can of worms, really, hasn't it, with this debate around whether Liverpool need a defensive midfielder. And I mean, that's been going on now for, well, ever since Fabinho left, really.
Well, even before that, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a comment in the chat again from South Asian Scouser about the defence-first midfielder. He says, it doesn't help when you see a man-of-the-match performance the day before from a player most of the fan base wanted at the club in Mamadou Sangare. Now, Mamadou Sangare...
Most of the fan base? I don't know. Did anybody?
I think he was on a couple of lists, wasn't he, of midfielders Liverpool could target, but I think, you know, he was in the same conversation with Lamine Camara at Monaco, and I think he was at Lens, was he, last season? He's just signed for Palace, is it?
Oh, he signed for Brentford. And he's a club record signer for Brentford, and it's just under 40 million, which is obviously big money for Brentford, but not something that would make Liverpool balk. So, I mean, I only seen their game in parts on Saturday, but he looked like he was going to be a good player for them. But, yeah, sometimes it's just a shiny new toy thing, isn't it? But certainly, I think if Liverpool are adamant that they're not going to be bringing in a sort of specialist number 6, then that system will need a lot of work with Ryan Gravenberch in there and Szoboszlai. And you just need to get that understanding a bit more of when one goes, the other one stays. And it just looked a bit of a mess at times on Sunday.
Yeah, and I mean, from what Iraola said after the match last night, he does see it more as a system issue, right? You know, I mean, the way he's talking about how players need to react in those situations. And he does say, like you say, a player could just foul him in that situation for that second goal, which maybe makes me think that he thinks it's a little bit more of a problem with the counter press than having the specific role of a midfielder. What do you make of that, Ian?
I think that every player can tackle. I think it's a mentality issue with Liverpool. I think that if they wanted to, they could have fouled him. Whistle, wasn't it, when he was running through, and we were saying just like foul him. There's nothing wrong with fouling. Is part of the game. Although if my dad listens to this, he'll just be fuming because he hates it. But it's part of the game. It's like there's many other team sports in which that is. You've got to know how to do it. We mentioned Fabinho before. He was great at the tactical foul. Look at Man City; they've been doing it for years. Look at Arsenal now. They just do it for fun, basically. They're not afraid to take a yellow or the old phrase of take one for the team, but you know what it means. It's like Szoboszlai, whoever it was, could have literally just led him up. It would have been a clear yellow, but it would have stopped, and the crowd would have been annoyed, but it would have allowed it. Yeah. Well, it didn't even need to do that. Just make an attempt to play the ball. And if you make a genuine attempt, then it looks a lot better than just grabbing somebody by the shirt, because that's clearly you're not even trying to catch them. But going back to the midfield, he's got to bear in mind Alexis McAllister is still there, and he's more used to playing in a 2, more used to playing on the left of a 2, which is where Gravenberch's playing as well. And while we've obviously seen him last season not be particularly great, not being his best level, if he is playing anywhere near that, then he can come in and he can do that job, because they won the league with Gravenberch and McAllister there. Thing about, you mentioned about the pair of them have been there for 3 years, Gravenberch and Szoboszlai. They've hardly played together in terms of playing in that 2.
As a 2, yeah. We
saw Szoboszlai towards the end of last season play there, and he rotated. I think he played Jones one week, Gravenberch the next, and McAllister, and I can't remember who it was at the end that he was playing alongside, but he went there because I think Arne Slot saw that that's the way things were going, and they're going to have to do that. And they've said both Slot and Iraola said that Szoboszlai is a number 8, and the player himself said he's a number 8, so he's going to be one of those players. So Liverpool have got options. That's what the 2 goals they conceded. Certainly the first one, as Gorst mentioned, was ridiculous, because anyone with any sense, Szoboszlai would have just stayed back. He should have stayed back. It was good play by Gravenberch, and Iraola said after the game, we don't want to take that out of his game, but we have to be aware that he's capable of doing that in the same way Szoboszlai is. So the other player has to step back, or somebody else has to move across. And if you're going to play the fullbacks really high, like Liverpool did do for a large part of the game on Sunday, suddenly it's like, hang on, Newcastle are onto us straight away. And the added complication that they played 2 up front, which is probably part of the reason why they did play 2 up front, because they knew the minute that Liverpool lost the ball, they'd be able to get onto them, and suddenly it's a foot race. And we saw with the first goal, 1 pass and they're in, and same for the second one, although the second one was different because they had a lot of players back and they kind of learned from the first one. But you may as well have had me, you, Gorsty and Ian, the producer, just running alongside them, because if you're not going to do anything. So it's you've got to be a bit more proactive and a bit more aggressive, and something that, if you look at Iraola's teams at Bournemouth, I've said this quite a few times already in this podcast and written it. The last 2 years, they were amongst the highest number of yellow cards. They were quite happy to be quite physical and get stuck in. And I think that's what he wants more from his team. And let's go back to what I said before. It's a mentality thing. They can all make a tackle if they want to. Certainly in midfield. I mean, you pointed out that when Gravenberch made a tackle in the second half, wasn't it, where he looked like he got injured straight away.
He injured himself because he's not used to doing it.
There is a talent to that, a skill, a technique, and they're going to have to learn it, because that is exactly what Iraola wants from his players.
I also think as well that the squad generally is just a few too many quiet boys in there. It's a load of sort of son-in-laws that you'd want coming home, isn't it? They're all just a little bit too nice. And Florian Wirtz, for example, could easily have just taken, like Doyle says, take one for the team and drag back Visser, and that doesn't develop and nothing more gets said of it, because he's not the type of player who's going to pick up a second yellow, is he? Because he's not going to argue with the ref. He's probably not going to put in a mistimed tackle or anything like that. So that just shows Liverpool's naivety at times. And Szoboszlai and Gravenberch are really good players, but they want to get on the ball a lot and dictate the game. And there will be occasions this season when they will do that, and Liverpool will win handsomely. But occasionally, when you go away from home in a tough venue and difficult atmosphere like that, you just need a bit of a snarler in your team, don't you? And that's why I was surprised actually that Ronald Araujo didn't start the game. I thought Jeremy Jacquet did quite well, but I thought that might have been set up for someone like Araujo, who just sort of defends first and doesn't really ask any questions. So, yeah, I just think maybe it's something to do with the makeup of the squad, really, where they're all just a bit too nice and they want to get on the ball and play, and they could just do with someone with a bit more, you know, I guess being a bit more streetwise is the phrase.
Is this more of an experience thing then? Because if you look at the profile of players that Liverpool are trying to bring in, we are going for especially young kind of prospects, I think, compared to how we've operated in previous years. And maybe that's with a view to, you know, just how many teams are able to snap up players at a younger and younger age with data analytics and stuff like that. But is that potentially a problem?
Yeah, possibly. You know, you've seen Chelsea really struggle, haven't you, with that model for the last few years, and it's no surprise that they've completely gone the opposite way this summer. And for me, they've probably gone too far that way, where they're bringing in Danny Welbeck and Jordan Henderson, who are 35, 36, as opposed to bringing in a player who's 27 and they're in the prime currently. So maybe that is something that's an issue. But Liverpool have worked hard to dramatically reduce the age of the squad, because they've had a number of players who've all aged together. You know, Van Dijk, Robertson, Alisson, you know, all that sort of crop was together for a while, weren't they? Until they sort of got dismantled over the last 2 or 3 seasons. This year, you know, you've got Leone, who was signed last year, Jeremy Jacquet, even Victor Munoz, you know, players who were sort of aged between 19 and 22, 23. Ekitike was 22, I think, when he signed. So, yeah, they have worked hard on reducing the age of the squad, the average age, which has come down massively because Robertson and Salah have left, you know, almost naturally. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose it's something that we've been speaking about for months, isn't it? This idea that Liverpool need a bit more experience in certain areas and a bit more know-how and a bit more, you know, a bit more nous.
I thought you'd said Barry Welbeck then, by the way, which is a far better name. A far better name, which we should get onto the.
Yeah, we should speak to his parents,
exactly.
Yeah.
Might be his brother.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, but in terms of the experience, there is a player there. We mentioned Endo, but he's not been fit enough for the best part of the calendar year, hasn't he? When he played against Sunderland, he was quite good, and in his first season under Slotty, the first season that he played at Liverpool under Klopp, he actually second half of the season did really well playing as just the number 6. It wasn't the two of them; he was just playing as there. And that kind of released McAllister, didn't it, to go forward for the second half of the season.
Again, he hasn't played for 2 years, has he, really?
Well, that's the thing, is that he got the reputation as the closer under Slot, which he did for the first season. Then the second season, when he tried to do it a couple of times, he got injured. I think it was Chelsea and Leeds. And then February, when he came on, started against Sunderland, season over after that. So that's the other side of having experienced players to pick up injuries, certainly at that age. But there has to be a little bit more... I think the reason that people say it's experienced, certainly in midfield, is that obviously going around fouling people, anyone can do that. And that's what's frustrating. And players at that age probably think they have to prove themselves, so they want to be seen to be doing all the other bits and bobs. And if you are going to go into it and you're going to go around just kicking people, people might think, well, anybody can do that, and they're not quite as valuable. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a part of this that can be mitigated a little bit by tactics. I mean, if we're looking at, say, Wirtz's positioning for both of those goals, really. I think obviously the main point for the first one is Szoboszlai kind of pushing up into that inside right position. Yeah. But you do see, particularly with the second goal, because it's it kind of breaks to Gravenberch, doesn't it? And then his shot gets blocked, and so he goes in to try and like nick that ball back, and you actually see Wirtz kind of almost think, oh, I need to drop a little bit here and make sure my rest shape's right, so if this ball breaks, I can pick it up. But he doesn't really get there quick enough, and then like you say, you know, when him and Szoboszlai both have the opportunity to make the foul, neither of them do it. And I mean, Iraola points to this, but I think that kind of leads on to something that Pete mentioned in the comments just a few minutes ago, that because Gravenberch and Szoboszlai are now playing with that more of a playmaking 10 rather than a McAllister type player in that midfield, is that the balance just off? And you know, can that be achieved? Can that be remedied really by getting a tighter counter press going and maybe making sure that back line is a bit closer to the midfield, or do we just literally need a new player?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, certainly when you spend that kind of money on Florian Wirtz and, you know, massive expectations on him this season, he's going to be playing more often than not, isn't it? But I was having a conversation with someone in the mix zone, and they were suggesting that, do you go to Newcastle and play a 2 in midfield? You know, these are the sorts of games where you maybe just need a bit more solidity in there and turn it into a 3 with McAllister starting ahead of Florian Wirtz. But it's tough, isn't it? Because the brand new season, all the expectations and all that, and you're already looking to mitigate things here or there. And yeah, I don't think it was a particularly good day for Wirtz. He will have better days this season, I'm sure of it. But, you know, it's more just the two that are in there. They've just got to learn that role a bit more, and that will come in time. But you know, while they're waiting for that to be resolved on the training pitch, I still think Liverpool could do with another midfielder, because they've just let Curtis Jones leave, and they're not looking to replace him because they think Trent Ione is going to have a big future, which will be true. But while you're waiting for that future to sort of develop and prosper, you know, you're playing games, you're trying to win matches, the season's going on. So I just think Liverpool could do with another body in there, but I'm still not convinced they're going to listen to the populist opinion, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that obviously so much faith has been put in Ione, Ian, but he doesn't actually make it onto the pitch last night. I think we've all, you know, waxed lyrical about how good he was in the pre-season, but is that a concern if you're not going to trust him in these kind of games?
Well, it's the first game of the season, isn't it? Newcastle away, and I'm pretty sure if you'd have taken off one of the defenders a lot earlier on and brought on Ione, loads of people would have gone, why are you doing that? We're getting beat 2-1. We need some forwards on there. So that's why Kumas got on ahead of him, for example, and Munoz. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But again, he's a player who's still trying to find his position. To a certain degree, a bit like Curtis Jones. He never really did find a proper position in the sense of somewhere that he knew he was going to be playing all the time. But he's only 19, so he's got a long way to go. And for him, his next step, he hasn't started a Premier League game in his career yet. So that's the next step, to actually be in that starting lineup. And given the fact he's got Wirtz, McAllister, Gravenberch, Szoboszlai ahead of him, it's going to be a bit of a tough task. But obviously, Areola likes him, and what he's proven at Bournemouth is that he knows how to get the most out of youngsters. So he'll be, but it's very different to do it at Bournemouth because there's not quite the same expectation as you get at Liverpool, which is why sometimes I think people, going back to Curtis, because obviously since we did the last podcast he left, his contribution to Liverpool could be understated because he played 200 odd games as an academy player coming through. As I mentioned, playing in a variety of positions, with all that extra, weight of expectation and responsibility, and under the scrutiny of everything that comes from being a homegrown player. So, and he won 2 titles. Okay, one of them really played a little bit towards the end, but played a big part in winning the other one, and won a couple of cups as well. So he's had a pretty successful career at Liverpool, and he probably, we know he just fancied that new challenge because he didn't quite fancy the idea of, he still wasn't a first name on the team sheet, and if he's going to be that at Inter Milan, then fair enough. But he's gone now, and I remember when Curtis first came into the team, and he obviously made his mistakes out there on the pitch, and the fans on social media were very quick to criticise him. Just going to wait for Ione will come into that team, and he will make mistakes, and I'm waiting to see whether they do exactly the same thing, which they will, because that's just human nature.
Yeah. I mean, that's the question I'm getting at, I suppose. I mean, obviously, I think we all think Ione's got the ability to do that eventually and be that kind of player.
The only way you're going to learn it is when he actually goes out and does it.
Exactly. Yeah. He has to play. And are Liverpool at risk of putting themselves in the same position as they did last season with Rio and Gamoa? Obviously, we don't sign another winger, so we don't block the pathway of Rio. But because he's so young, he doesn't exactly start many games. He's not really trusted in the same level as other kind of squad players in the team. And I think, when you've got a player like Curtis Jones leaving, the next player up kind of has to be ready, right? It's
a lot easier. Sorry, Gorst. It's a lot easier. It's a lot easier for a player to come in as a youngster to a team that isn't doing particularly well. And I know people will say,
Stefan Bajcetic was an example.
Liverpool fans will say, well, we're not particularly good at the moment. Well, the reality is Liverpool finished 5th in the Champions League this season, and people will expect them to challenge for some of the cups, right? I'm talking about a team that's a little bit lower down the league, and which Liverpool have been in the past. You look at the team that 25 years ago, going a little bit further, where Carragher got in it, Gerrard got in it, David Thompson got in it. I think I mentioned this before. Dominic Matteo a little bit was around then as well. There was a few others. They got into the team and they got their minutes. Not all of them ended up having long careers at Liverpool. All of them ended up having great careers in the Premier League. But it was easy to get into that. And if that team, and when they were making the mistakes, they were making mistakes along with a lot of other players of more seniority, and maybe they got a bit more disguised than perhaps a player coming in now will have. So it is harder because Liverpool, the bar's so high for youngsters to come in and do so, which is why that Ungamoa has done as well as he has done. It's credit to him, and it shows that Liverpool, you mentioned that could he have got more minutes last season, but weirdly, because Liverpool weren't doing particularly well, he didn't. It was almost like it's a reverse of what I've just said, but that's because the expectation was so high in Liverpool as Premier League champions. Back 25 years ago, it wasn't quite as high. So I think it is going to be difficult, but the best way for youngsters to come in, regardless of whether the team is in the league, is if the team is playing well, because then that gives them the platform to go out, just produce your best, and if you make some mistakes, everybody else can kind of bail you out.
The thing that concerns me at the moment is we've obviously just spent 20 minutes talking about the potential need for another midfielder. They still haven't sorted this right winger issue.
Well, that's it. Rio on the right.
You've only got Florian Wirtz and Isaac as a number 9 and number 10 at the moment. So the squad just looks like it's a bit of a mess at the moment, doesn't it? And I feel for Iraola, really, because he said since day one that he needs wingers. And, okay, they signed Victor Munoz, but that was before we had the chance to speak to him last month when he started doing his press conferences. And he's never shied away from the fact that they need wingers. And he said it to Jamie Carragher was a thing that went out on Sky on Friday. He's been consistent with it, really. And, you know, what is it now? I think we spoke to him sort of mid-July. So maybe 5 or 6 weeks further down the line and still no nearer to getting anyone through the door. So it's just, you're just waiting for this squad to be complete so they can go and try and improve on the disappointments of last season. And right now it looks like it needs a lot of work, which is obviously going to cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah, I saw a couple of stats that I thought were really telling from the game yesterday, which is Liverpool directed 38% of their attacks down the right. I think it was about 31 on the left, 30 through the middle. So not a massive bias, but definitely a bias towards that right-hand side. And obviously the two players starting on that side, Rio Ngamoura and Jeremy Frimpong. Now, in the 60 minutes they were on the pitch together, they combined for a total of 3 passes, which I think kind of says a lot about how, at the moment, that combination doesn't look particularly effective. And I think you've been quite adamant that you prefer to see Rio on the left.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of understood it when we were talking about it in pre-season, this idea that, okay, maybe another string to his bow, and he comes on in Yankee Stadium and he scores the winning goal against Wrexham, but it still looks a bit awkward. That was a month ago. Still looks a bit uneasy, doesn't it? Out on that side playing in Premier League games, and there's no doubt about it. He looks a lot more at home on the left. But I mean, Frimpong, is he a Liverpool player? I'm not sure, and maybe we're judging him a bit prematurely because he obviously has injuries last season and stuff like that. But whether it's right wing or right back, I'm still not sure where he plays. And there was just a number of sort of openings yesterday that fell by the wayside because his crossing was nowhere near good enough, and just not sure he will make the grade long term. Now, hopefully, I'm proven wrong on that, but I wrote in the match report yesterday that Conor Bradley's return can't come soon enough, really, and that right side really did struggle, didn't it, with Ngamoura and Frimpong. You know, you'd be less or more reluctant to criticise Ngamoura because he's a young lad. He doesn't turn 18 until Saturday, I think, and obviously he's playing in a new position. Bit unfair to expect too much of him, but as a sort of combination, that just didn't work at all, and it's got a bit of potential because there's so much pace in there. But yeah, I'm just not sure about Jeremy Frimpong, to be honest, whether it's a right back or a right winger.
We got a comment in the chat from Steve Grant here who says Frimpong attacks like a defender and defends like an attacker.
Somebody else said that.
Someone said that to us yesterday, yeah. And I mean, it might sound harsh, but I wouldn't disagree with it, if I'm honest.
I think he's got some great attributes. I mean, mainly his pace, let's be honest.
He's a good sub.
But when he's bad, he stinks the gas.
He's a good sub to bring on, I think, and he's a good every now and again to play, but he's not going to be somebody who's going to be starting all the games, and he shouldn't be a starting right back in a major game. But Liverpool don't have any other options at the moment. Although, if everybody had been more up to speed, we had this conversation on the way back, I'd have been tempted to put Araujo at right back.
I think that's partly why they've signed him.
For this game, not necessarily at home against somebody not particularly great, but I think for this game that would have been not a bad one to do, because Liverpool have had some quite difficulty with right backs up there. Gerald Trent didn't play there quite a lot, did he? When he did, he had a bit of a tough one up against Anthony Gordon a couple of times. So, yeah.
So we got another comment saying from SDP3998 saying fullback crossing was dire / poor quality. Won't help Isak. said before, ping pong is not at the level, which is frimpong, obviously. I mean, you gave frimpong and Kirkes fours in your player ratings. You weren't impressed with Kirkes either then?
The problem with Kirkes is that he put a couple of good balls in the second half, but it was like the players weren't really expecting him to do it. And I think that's the worry. I mean, defensively, he really struggled up against Elanga, didn't he? Got caught out for the first goal. I think that's kind of been overlooked a little bit. I mean, it was a good run and a good pass. But
Elanga's one of the quickest in the league, isn't he? So
I'm not sure how much more he could have done about that, to be honest.
I think, I don't know. Anyway, but there's other times where Iraola was fuming at him for not closing him down. So it wasn't just that particular instance. But I think with Kirkes I actually think the second half of last season he was fine. I think there was some games where they played Manchester City at home when they got beat 2-1. That was probably one of his best games. He proper took the fight and he was to them, and he was involved and he was getting, I can't remember who played right wing for City that day. There was one very early on against Arsenal.
Yeah.
Where I think he got done very early on in the game, but then after that he just went and just blocked him off. So there's that, but I think it comes down to the whole team as a whole. And the thing about Kirkes, because he's so keen to impress and to win, is that when things are going wrong, he tries even harder, and sometimes that makes it even worse. And I think there was a little bit of instance of that in the second half where Newcastle were breaking down the right, and he wasn't sure whether or not to. I think he's going to go down here, so he was trying to stand off him, and Van Dijk's like, "What are you doing? Get up there towards him," and he was almost getting hold of him, pushing him towards him. And I think in the end, Van Dijk just got fed up and went over there himself, which meant that two players were out of position then. So there is a bit of work to be done, but as Gorst said, it's the first game. It's Newcastle away, and while I was very unimpressed by the overall standard of both teams, I think Newcastle aren't very good, and I think they're going to struggle this season for all the talk up there of after the game of the journalists and fans saying, but they must have been expecting something absolutely horrific. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So, but
they got battered by Everton the other week, and not many teams could say that.
We were thinking, well, I was thinking Liverpool weren't going to win, which on the drive up everyone just laughed, and I just need to point that out because you did.
No one laughed. It was just a shock horror. You're not predicting Liverpool to win.
I haven't predicted them to win for ages. They haven't won a game since April, is it? A competitive game for a long time, isn't it now?
So, 5 league games without win.
Exactly, yeah. Well, that's the
last time they won, was it Crystal Palace?
Palace, yeah.
Wow.
Which you went at?
No.
Yeah, stay away. I think was what we learned from that.
Fine by me.
As long as you get paid.
Weekends off.
But going back to that point, is there was only the one starter that wasn't at the club last season, so. And bear in mind that Van Dijk and Gakpo haven't been training that much with the new, I think it's 3 weeks, isn't it now? Three or maybe 3 weeks at the most, I think. With the
Start
squad.
of August, yeah.
Yeah, with the squad. And Gravenberch actually as well. I think he's a little bit long because he joined him in the US, didn't he? So there's still an awful long way to go. Iraola saw at Bournemouth that it took him quite a while for the players to get on board. The only thing is that it's not too far removed from what it was like under Jurgen Klopp a couple of years ago, and the players are still there, so surely they can understand the concept of it. But I think over the next few weeks, they got a week training this week, got the week next week, and then that's more or less it for midweeks, because then they've got a Champions League game, a League Cup game and a Champions League game, then a very long international break, and then it's Champions League and so on and so forth after that. So these are going to be important weeks, irrespective of whether anybody else comes in or not. And if we're not expecting the midfielders to come in, then there's no excuse for the midfielders who are there now, who are going to be the midfielders for the rest of the season, to work it out. And it's going to be important because they can't afford to take as long as they did at Bournemouth to get on board with his tactics.
So you're going to say get on board with Nord then?
No, we can get on board with Nord, yeah.
Well, Iraola mentioned after the Como game that basically before the fixtures start coming 2s and 3s a week, this is like the ideal time because he's got a full week on the training pitch for about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. So they've absolutely got to maximise that on the training pitches, and I guess that is where these sorts of things are ironed out, aren't they? So yeah, it's important actually. It's not just them training, going through the motions. There are things to work on, and they need to be doing that behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm definitely more in the camp of tactical kind of suitability, and getting to know the system will help. Probably a lot more than getting in a specialist defensive midfielder or something like that. Now, I'm not saying I don't think Liverpool should do that. I think having that profile in the squad would be an excellent idea. But yeah, I do think once that kind of system is in place to be able to win the ball back quickly when we lose it, we're going to be in a better position. But one thing that's been on my mind really since the game is that Van Dijk particularly, but both of the centre-back pairing were quite often just positioned so deep on the ball that gap between the midfield and defence is quite big. And is that potentially going to be a problem, like the older Van Dijk gets, that we can't necessarily get away with playing quite as on the edge as we maybe did under Klopp?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was evident in pre-season, wasn't it? The Monaco game. Monaco was just getting in behind Liverpool's midfield a bit too easily, and that's where their first goal comes from, because I think it's Golovin picks it up, and he's allowed, a bit similar to yesterday really, he's allowed to carry it 20-25 yards and then ends up getting fouled by Van Dijk in the box, and it's a penalty. So yeah, it's just things that they need to work on, isn't it? You know, the distance between, like you say, the centre-backs and the midfielders, they need to learn not to at least pick and choose the moments when they're going to burst forward. If one goes, the other one stays. So all these little things just need working on, don't they? And, you know, Forest on Saturdays is actually a bit of a tricky one. You know, it's a 12:30 kickoff, which historically doesn't lend itself to a red-hot Anfield atmosphere. So, yeah, it's actually a tough one that on Saturday, especially with, like we say, so much to work on. And doesn't, you know, they might have brought in a winger or two by then, but like we say, it doesn't look like it's going to be a midfielder coming in. So what he's got now, he has to sort of reshape and make the best of.
You got to bear in mind that the game as well yesterday was basically Liverpool behind for 90 minutes of that game.
Yeah.
And so it was a tactical exercise in, can Liverpool cope being behind against a team that plays on the counter-attack, was essentially what the entire game became.
And there's going to be a lot of that this season, right? I mean, that's, you know, Liverpool are a team who are going to dominate possession a lot of the game. You know, we are going to have to break teams down, and we are going to have to face this week in, week out. So just getting used to it will...
The start of the second half, they did all right, and they scored the goal. Yeah. And I did a tweet saying, one thing Liverpool can't do now is do something stupid in the next 10 minutes. And which literally 30 seconds later, they conceded that goal. It was like
110 seconds it was after he come on, Joe Willock.
Was it? Is it his first goal since 2003 or something stupid like that?
I'm not sure. It was Elanga's first goal for Newcastle, and that was his 50th game.
First goal in the league. First goal in the league. Yeah, first goal in the league.
50 games.
Unbelievable.
And Willock definitely scored against Liverpool for Newcastle, I seem to recall. Behind the close, he's definitely scored against them before.
Sure. That's been when he was at Arsenal.
I'm going to do something paradoxical right now, and I'm going to ask you, Ian Doyle, to be a paragon of optimism for a second, and talk to us about Cody Gakpo, who I thought put in a really good performance yesterday, and was probably the only player in that forward line who really took responsibility.
Well, he was, wasn't he? I mean, it's almost like he's playing to make sure he doesn't get sold, I'll be honest.
Well, yeah.
This is the thing. Yeah, that might be a little bit unfair.
I think he would quite like to leave if Bradley Barcola comes in.
You think so?
Mm-hmm.
We had the disagreement on this one, didn't we? I think he'd want to stay. He's playing like somebody who does want to stay. And if Iriola's got asked about him on Friday and said, I've spoken to Cody, he's an intelligent player, he got on board with what we wanted, this, that and the other, and then we might be playing him for a bit down the centre, which I know some fans immediately said sell everybody on the back of that. But I know last season wasn't particularly great there, but he did all right 2 seasons before that. It's not his favourite position, but he can certainly do something there. And it's a different manager, different approach, different players around him, so we can't really judge him on that. But he gave the example of what Liverpool's forwards should be like. He had a bit of fight about him, a bit of purpose, good pressing. And the start of the second half, he kind of took it upon himself because he basically wasn't in his position when he scored that goal. He kind of ventured over there, and he just got fed up with everybody else.
He was there for a few minutes as well, because he kept asking for the ball, and then finally Gravenberch plays that one where it's through the middle, as opposed to just recycling it out wide, and they get the reward. It was a really good strike, to be fair. And he played well, didn't he? I thought he could have had a shot with the left foot instead of him chopping back in when Botman comes over and slides in. If he'd have just got that shot off a little bit earlier, that might have went in as well. But yeah, it was a good performance from him, actually.
But I wouldn't be selling him, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly like, it seems strange after, well, I mean, as much as some of the criticism might have been overblown last season, I think we were all quite frustrated watching him for large parts of last season. And, you know, Barcola's been tipped as this big upgrade or whatever on Gakpo. But I think kind of looking at the team, it's not really that left wing, the area that necessarily needs the most attention, really. When you've got Gakpo in the squad, I mean, who by no means is like a prolific striker, but is the current top scoring Liverpool player out of the current squad, and again seems like the only player capable of stepping up and taking responsibility. We did see another new player on the right, though, in the second half in Victor Munoz, and I'm going to stick with you on this. Like, what did you make of his performance? Because obviously he wins the penalty, but there's a lot of dribbles that seem to end up nowhere. But is that maybe what Liverpool need? Just a bit of direct.
Well, this is the thing. I wrote that saying, funny enough, I'd finished off writing the ratings before the game had finished, as we have to, and I'd put didn't really offer a lot down the right because he kept on running into his marker or run the ball out of play. But what that did do is that just his sheer persistence of just keeping on doing it meant that he was in that position to he could easily have won a penalty before that. Areola mentioned it, and I remember I spotted it as well. They gave a free kick on the edge of the area just as he was about to be fouled in the area. So if the referee just hung on for a second, it could have been a penalty. But it was definitely, I don't even understand what the debate is about that penalty, by the way. It's clearly a penalty.
Absolute stonewall.
It's always been a penalty. It's always been a penalty.
We didn't have access to the monitors in our press sheets, but you could tell it was a penalty straight away. Yeah, and one of the Newcastle fans next to me just sort of looked at me and said, "Is it a penalty?" Because she thought I had access to the screen, and I just sort of went, "Yeah, it is."
Well, there was a guy I could actually see behind us over there, and the guy got up and I looked at me and I went, "Yeah, it's a penalty." It's funny because we've said this before that when you get the fans near the press box, they know quite well that we have to report things as fact, and if someone says, "Was that a penalty? Was that offside?" and you go, "Kind of," you could be angry. Then you go, "Was it?" and they go, "Yeah." They go, "Oh." Right, so they kind of, there's still hope for trust in journalism.
So it currently looks like the player, if Liverpool are going to buy a player for that right-hand side, is Brighton's Yankuba Minter. There's been a couple of bids gone in for him. Rejected so far. SDP 3998 again has commented Minter 3 assists and 4 goals in 34 games for 70 million. What are LFC doing? So tell me, Paul Gorst, what are LFC doing?
Yeah, I mean, you boil it down to numbers. They don't look great, but I quite like them actually. And I think in this market, that sort of figure is par for the course. You know, for 60 million is the new 40 million, isn't it? Which is the old 20. You know, it's the way the prices are now. I actually quite like them, and I think, you know, Yandy Amande aside, he's probably the best of the lot in terms of that right wing profile. And I'm starting to wonder now whether putting all these eggs in the Barcola basket is wise. Because I think he was probably the best option that Liverpool can get for the left side. But the PSG is still haggling over this fee, and it's way north of 100 million. You know, I'd rather see them bring in someone else for that left side and maybe reinvest it elsewhere. You know, another forward who can play central while, you know, Ekitike's on the mend, or someone who can play right across the front. But as far as Minter goes, I actually quite like him. I think Liverpool have tried to test the waters a little bit with 50 million. I think Brighton are looking for 70. I wouldn't be shocked if 65 ends up being the agreeing point and he comes to Liverpool. It does seem as though he is keen to move, and we'll see what happens with that this week. Obviously, he's injured until October time, so that's not ideal. But from what I've seen, he's only 22, very direct. You know, someone who's going to get into really important positions and try and feed the likes of Alex Isak. So I actually quite like him. So, you know, if it is 70 million, so be it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the criticism of the numbers is valid. I mean, given he's had 2 full seasons now at Brighton, right? And but he's a player that makes things happen, isn't he? I think he leads the league for, you know, carries into the box last season. And
you've done your research here, haven't you?
Well, I've done enough deep dives on the winger targets to make, like, don't you worry. But I think he also puts the cross in, doesn't he, against Liverpool when they scored against us last year. So he's got something about him, and you would hope that at 22 that can develop. It is what Liverpool maybe need, just more of a facilitator type player, and, you know, potentially that final ball or shot is something that can be worked on, because it does seem like the rest of his game is already more or less in place. He's left-footed.
Can we not just have a right winger who's right-footed?
See, I'd quite like to have at least one left-footed attacker in the squad.
Left-footed, you've got everybody else that's on the left wing can just go over and play on the right if you want to do that.
Got 2 left-footers in the entire squad, haven't they? Well, Marmadashvili, I guess, yeah. Tsimikas and Kirkes.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. For some reason, I just felt as though everybody was left-footed because they're all playing over on the left.
What? No.
Gakpo's obviously right-footed, isn't he?
Munoz?
Right.
Right-footed,
is he?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. You learn something new every day.
I quite like him. You know, what I've seen of him anyway.
Why are you all playing on the left then? Someone needs to tell them.
Well, it's sort of invented by a playing, isn't it? But
I think what point I'm trying to make, though, is seriousness, is that you need to have that kind of variety on the right wing. And I suppose they'd argue that we're going back to Frimpong. Now, he's a right footer who can get down to the byline and cross it, which he did January, February last year. He was in good form until he got that injury. It was the end of January, wasn't it? So it's more December, January. Got the injury against Karabakh, wasn't it? After about 2 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he wasn't really the same when he came back after that. So maybe Liverpool think that, but overall, when you talk about the wing, I would sooner spend 70 million on a right winger and 50 million on a defensive midfielder of relative experience than spend 120 million pounds on Barcola and then have to get rid of a senior player to then buy somebody else to go on the right wing.
If Barcola still wants to move, well, he'll only have a year left on his contract next summer. So maybe there will come a time then for us to go back for him. Yeah.
I mean, will you think Liverpool have messed him about? I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe 2 years on the trot now.
Yeah.
But just going back to Minter, like I say, it's an imperfect world, that sort of right wing area, because there's no one who sort of leaps off the page at you as being the absolute must. So I think he probably would be the best one to bring in. Obviously, was at Newcastle, wasn't he? Newcastle forced to sell him because of PSR. He goes to Brighton and makes himself a bit of a Premier League star. And no doubt Liverpool have been watching him since he was on loan with Arne Slot to Feyenoord, wasn't he? So let's see what happens with that one this week. I still think if Liverpool are putting in bids and then putting in second offers, I think you're in the territory now of an agreement not being far away, and I think 65 million could be the magic point where they agree. And I can understand the reticence from Mr. SK9 8.3 or whatever his name was, because
SDP 3998, don't get it wrong,
of the money. But at the end of the day, if Liverpool, if they don't pay that money, it doesn't necessarily mean that money is going to be available elsewhere. It doesn't really work like that anymore, does it? Where it's just sort of one kitty. It's like if Liverpool feel he's the player, they'll go and pay it and pay the fee for him. And then if they want someone else, they'll pay the fee for him. It's not necessarily, the old transfer kitty, the way sometimes people think it is. So if they have to overpay the odds by 5-10 million, so be it, because they absolutely need forwards and wingers and players who are going to lighten the load up front.
I mean, the one player we haven't really touched on, which I think all of this is contingent on, now as we probably come to the last bit of this podcast, but Alexander Isak. I mean, the wingers that Liverpool target, right, surely their primary function has to be to get goals out of Isak. It was another pretty, underwhelming display from Isak yesterday, and I think, to be fair, in pretty understandable circumstances, that he's not exactly kicked on at Liverpool yet. He's going back to his old club. The atmosphere he received was, I've got to take your hat off to it, really. Like, they made it completely hostile.
Do you know what made me laugh? They were obviously booing every one of his touches, and Liverpool had a corner, and Szoboszlai's got the ball and he's ready to put it down and take it. There was another ball on the pitch, and Isak went to kick it out, and they even booed that touch as well. So it was just very strong commitment to the bit. But I mean, it was the kind of abuse you don't really see in the modern game, wasn't it? They were calling him a rat, as he walked into the players' tunnel. They were calling him worse when the game kicked off. A greedy, and 4-letter words, and
I don't know what was
booing and jeering, and it was just I can't say it because we'll get barred in certain territories on Spotify.
What do you mean? Every territory, I think.
So it was just, normally you get the odd boo, don't you? When a player leaves in acrimonious circumstances, they come back and they get booed. But this was full house on the bingo card of everything they could chance at him, and in a way it worked, didn't it? He didn't have a good game at all. He had one half chance, snatched at it, put it over the bar, and that was about it.
Well, I don't think he was particularly bothered by it. I mean, if that was me and I was out there, I mean, just me speaking, I always think these things are funny. Even the guy,
he was having a little chuckle at it, wasn't he, on his way into the tunnel?
It's like, if you've got people that riled for doing, I mean, we've done many a time that he shouldn't have done some of the stuff that he did, but ultimately he got the 125 million pounds and scored the goal that won them their first trophy in 250 years. That he probably should have been, over time, he will probably be treated a little bit better when he goes back. But for now, it's probably, they've got that out of the system now because
No, I think they will hold on to that forever.
Well, they might get relegated this season. You never know. So we might have to wait and see. But they won't get relegated. I can assure you, they will not get anywhere near relegated. I just thought it was funny, and I think the reason that he was ineffective was not to do with that. It's to do with the fact that the two fullbacks were not very good for Liverpool, and one of the wingers didn't really do very much, and the number 10 wasn't able to. The number 10 wasn't able to build on a decent-ish start from himself. So the only chance he had was when he set it by Gakpo and put it over the bar. It wasn't an easy chance. Obviously, the fans loved that, but
on his weaker left foot.
Yeah, come the end of the game, Liverpool fans were chanting his name, and be left with a little bit of a smirk on his face, I suspect.
So we're both still in the camp of backing Isak 100%, and we're not looking at Andy Carroll 2 Electric Boogaloo.
No. He's a far better player than Andy Carroll. But you want to see a bit more now, don't you? Obviously, we know the caveats and the asterisks and all that, but now's the time to push on, forget about all that, and go and be the Liverpool's main man. To do that, he will need chances putting on a play for him, but yeah, just with him and Wirtz, you just need them to start clicking sooner rather than later. I listened to Gary Neville sort of critique their performances yesterday, and I couldn't really disagree with it, with what he said on both players. So, yeah, not even a big season for them, big few weeks, because you just need to start seeing some signs that they're going to click into gear. Yeah.
All right, so I think we'll finish on a bit more of a positive note, maybe try and repair some of these wounds between the two fan bases. Ian, me and you were both on the pod when news of Kevin Keegan's death broke. Yeah. I just thought it was such a beautiful tribute to him before the game yesterday. I mean, what was that like in the stadium?
Yeah, it was very good. Yeah. I mean, again, if the fans are going to come together, the Newcastle fans, and jeer one player, then if you can imagine that, then the actual outpouring of emotion in terms of a tribute towards another player, and Kevin Keegan, who's a legend for them as a player, as a manager, a legend at Liverpool as a player. You could sense it. I hope it come across on the television, by the way, because it looked
stunning.
You could feel it. You could feel it inside the stadium. It wasn't just the Newcastle fans as well. They made the point that with Liverpool fans, they got together and the mosaic, the Liverpool bit at the top of the thing, at the Keegan, yeah. So overall, you could, even before the game, it was all building up towards that. And you could argue that the man of the way the game went with another last-minute goal, changing the result, it was probably the kind of game that was very much Keegan-esque in the sense that one team just had not much defence and there was, quite a lot going on towards the end. So he'd have been quite pleased with it. Right result in the end.
Did you ever have any dealings with Keegan?
No, because he was... I didn't even see him play, to be honest. That's how long ago it was. He retired the season after I started watching football, and Newcastle were in the second division, then so in the first division. They did play Liverpool in the FA Cup, and I wasn't at that game because I would have been about 7. It was a Friday night, I think. I probably had to stay in bed at that point.
No, it did. It was really well done. The tifo as well was very striking visually, wasn't it? It was basically right the way across from where we were sitting, and it looked really great. And yeah, I mean, Liverpool fans always do this sort of stuff well, don't they? Honouring their legends, and Newcastle was superb on the day as well with their tributes. So
there was a nice little message from the Keegan family as well on all the the little mosaic, the little things that people had to hold up. They had a little written message from the Keegan family as well, which got into the programme as well. So that was a nice touch because that's what he means to people up there, and for people of a certain age, certainly people who support Liverpool, he'll always be, King Kev.
Absolutely, a genuine great, and thank you everybody for your comments today. Can
we just
really
finish
good.
with what we bring about the
Nord
Nord person of the week, which is what we used to do.
By all means,
And who are we picking? Tough one, isn't it? I'm gonna go Gakpo.
Cody.
No, hang on. No, I'm gonna go Gakpo. I'm sticking with Cody. Yeah, sticking with Cody.
Yeah, you know what? I'll go along with that. It's not necessarily a man of the match award per se, is it? It's more just someone who might have had an extremely productive week.
Yeah, and he kind of embodies the kind of fight that Liverpool needed to get something out of that game. There.
Yeah, I'll go with Cody.
I think that's a unanimous decision then.
First Nordy of the season goes
to
Cody
will
Gakpo.
be delighted when he finds out. Delighted.
I'm sure he's watching now.
He is, yeah.
Yeah. Friend of the channel. But yeah, thank you very much for tuning in once again to the Blood Red podcast, and we'll be with you again later in the week, I'm sure, with another show. So cheers.